I did, yeah. Yeah, 27. 16. No, chapter 27, yeah. It's between the dog and something. It's like in 3 pages. Yeah, you're just saying. Yeah, you go from we don't have enough paper.
Hey, welcome.
Yeah, I got to be right. Maybe you should read it.
Was that? Oh, you know this guy, right? Concerning trash laws. One is a brief. 67. Oh, you should have it. Yeah. Take 20 carrots. And he says, like, I guess we should take carrots. Right, you don't have to.
I've always posted these little post-its like yours, but mine are really classier, so I don't.
Yeah, okay. I just want that section. All right, well, what was it?
So I missed the story from buildings of the dog.
All right, let's not get crazy here.
Yeah.
You did?
We're waiting for you again.
Now what that's on.
Bring the meeting order. Bring the meeting order. There we go. Pledge allegiance to the flag.
United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ronald Reese.
Here.
Joseph Michaels. Keith Johnson. Gary Guglielmetti.
Here.
Mark Lodi.
Here.
Loud enough? My name's Alan Flegel. I live at 73 Lower High Street, across the street from the Railroad Museum in Phoenicia, New York. All right. Okay, my name is Alan Flegel, and I live across the street from the Railroad Museum on Lower High. I live directly across the street in a little house that was once the conductor's house. It was the conductor's house when the train was a vital resource, functioning from New York City to the Catskills. It was a necessary form of transportation. Most people had to ride a train to get up here. The train was really necessary. Today it's a tourist attraction. We've been fans of the railroad since we moved here in 1986. The railroad's been a wonderful resource to town. We used to ride the train when my children were growing up. We would ride from the station a little up Route 28 and back. And today we enjoy music that's occasionally promoted by the Flying Cat Productions at the Railroad Museum. So we use the railroad. We like it. About 13 years ago, my wife and I bought the land belonging to Helmer Ring, the property right next door to our house, which also included a lot of land across the street on the railroad side. After we bought the property, the railroad told us that the land was promised to them. Since my wife and I only needed the land on our side of the road, we honored the deal because we liked what we saw there. And it was good for our town. We liked the railroad. Besides, the land was in the floodplain anyway, and we thought we would not be able to build because it was in the floodplain. Years later, during Irene, the waters rose around the whole station and ran as fast as the Esopus Creek. It was amazing that the station didn't get washed away completely. Today, the Railroad Museum has expanded, and the cute little station that used to be there no longer is cute or inviting, or working the way it used to. A giant building has been built across the street already. Last week, a big yellow machine was doing something near the building, and exhaust came across the street to my house and lingered there for a while, and I had to go in my house to avoid the exhaust, the smell from the machinery. Today, when I look outside across the street to the railroad, instead of seeing the cute little inviting station, I see rusty trains lined up that need a lot of work. The railroad yard looks like a junkyard for trains, not the tourist attraction that it once was. The railroad wants to fix up trains and run them. They want to expand what they've been doing and more. In addition to building an industry, they want to add more tracks and ride trains on the property. The industry has already started. I read in the paper that the railroad was asked to leave Kingston because, among other things, they did not maintain the property as they promised. So they're bringing everything here to Phoenicia, to our residential neighborhood. It looks to me like they started the industry and it's growing. Had I known they had plans like this to change the nature of our neighborhood, I never would have given them the land. We moved here from New York City, from Canal and the Bowery, to Manhattan, from the Manhattan Bridge to here. We found a quiet little village in the heart of the forever wild Catskills. We bought our little acre of land here. Our family's been incredibly happy here. They could go off and play in the woods like we did when we were kids. So I'm sorry to say my family and I are against the expansion and restructuring of the land use across the street. We're against the variance. We do not want the land to be used for industry. We're residential and we want to remain like that. In addition, the industry is so close to the Esopus that I don't think it's a good idea or safe. Anyway, that's it.
as reasons for the variance, the railroad has said that they want a use variance. The property has been pre-existing as a railroad yard. I'm submitting affidavits by my lawyer, Rod Futterfast, has submitted along with his letter to you, refuting all of the floor railroad responses for use variance. Sorry, wrong glasses. The affidavits are sworn testimonies that these parcels since the early 50s have been wild, rural, not used as a railroad yard. They've been used for cross-country skiing from the 80s to the present. A former owner details that property from the early 70s through the early 80s, where he cleared trees some 12 inches in diameter, and he raised horses there. With Shandaken zoning laws in place in 1976, these parcels were zoned residential. They were zoned residential when bought by the railroad in 1990 and 2001, respectively. Rod Futterfast brought to our attention that it is against the law to buy residential property and try to turn it into an industrial use. They responded, and I quote, "As our current lease with Ulster County for use of the railroad is about to expire, and as there is no certainty that we will be granted an extension, a hardship exists in where to store and maintain our equipment and trains. Ulster County has instructed us to remove all of our equipment and vacate the railroad's right-of-way by May 31st. A need to store or work on equipment does not fulfill the law's definition and requirement of a hardship. Last month I submitted a long list with pictures from their website of their equipment, almost 50 large engines, repair vehicles, railroad cars, many and most of them in need of repair. Their requests do not even limit the equipment to their own equipment. Despite having been told only a few cars would be brought up, their own application and responses tell a different story. Granting these variances, the town could not monitor use or storage. Once industrial use is granted, it cannot be monitored. No matter how much we would want to make a compromise for a group that many support and care deeply about, in this case, our hands are tied. There are 4 criteria to grant a use variance by law, and the railroad hasn't met any of them. I want to submit the letter talking about that from Rod Futterfast, along with 3 affidavits of use of that property, some covering many decades, along with my letter. But of the affidavit and the letter, and there's my thank you.
Thank you.
Donald Cassell.
Yeah, that's me. I'm going to skip the microphone because I think I speak loud enough. Can you hear me right? Okay. Here's an exhibit for you, which you probably know about. My name is Donald Cassell. I live at 97 Lower High Street in Phoenicia. And on this tax map that you have here, you'll see where I marked where our property is, Ms. Taylor's property, and 2 properties belonging to Tom and Dana Frazier, who are not in attendance tonight. Let me say first that I have been a supporter of the railroad for the 25 years that we've lived up here. I've watched it get restored a little bit further every year, and then it just kind of stopped, you know? 25 years and they've gotten as far as Boyceville. Never made it across the bridge over the Esopus. Just didn't get it done in 25 years. And now they want to build an 8,000 square foot commercial industrial building based on a failed business plan a few hundred feet from my house and these other houses. How is that going to impact our property values and the money that we put into restoring those properties? It's insane. It's like a failed business asking for a major expansion. And what happens if that business fails altogether? The county doesn't renew their lease. They run out of money. We'll have a pile of stuff there, and they'll want to sell that building and that property, which is, if you folks decide, to be zoned commercial and industrial. So somebody else can come along, not a railroad, and put something else there. What, a chicken farm? Who the hell knows? So, it pains me because I do support the railroad. I'm somewhat of a railroad historian myself. I have a lot of ephemera from the railroad. I have pictures of all the stations on the U&D. And I'm really sorry that this didn't get done in the 30 years that they've had to do it. But I can't, as someone who's invested in this property that we live on, have this thing go up across the street. It's as simple as that. It's your responsibility, you good people, to protect everyone by making the right decision for everyone in the community. And that decision should be to deny this application. Specifically, the change in use is what I'm speaking to. The environmental concerns there are people better qualified than me to speak to those, so I won't, okay? I'm speaking strictly to the change of use and its impact on our property values and our investments. So I urge you to deny this variance. Thank you.
Meg Carey?
My name is Meg Carey, and I live in Glenford, and I have a very short statement, which is that if you have the authority to grant a use variance with the restriction of for railroad purposes only, as I heard at the last meeting, I urge you to do so.
Thank you so much. I'm sorry I didn't get on the list. My name is Claudia Bramer. I'm an attorney representing Anik Taylor and the Phoenicia neighbors, along with attorney Rod Footerfast, who is not able to be here tonight. In this circumstance, the applicant has not met all of the legal criteria, and I'm sure that you will be able to review that in Rod's letter. I just want to reiterate that if any one of the criteria is not met, then it is your legal duty to deny the application. And here, all four of the criteria have not been met. They can achieve a reasonable return through any of the other allowed uses on that property. And I believe that Kathy Nolan has a letter to that effect outlining the other uses that are available on the property. In addition, this has been a self-created hardship. They purchased the property when the zoning was already in effect. Simple. Additionally, we've heard about the negative effect on the community character. There's already some issues with smells and unsightliness, and there will also be noises that are not normal for that community, that quiet neighborhood. In addition, the applicant has alleged that there are unique circumstances related to them and their loss of the Kingston site for their storage, but that is not the legal test. The test relates to the uniqueness of the site, and we've not heard anything about that. It may seem unfair to the applicant here, but the town law and the zoning code are very strict for a reason, and that is to protect the comprehensive zoning plan. And as for allowing a use variance for the specific use of railroad, that does not seem like it's going to work unless you're only going to grant them the use of the rail line, which they already have. Seems to be a pre-existing use, just the rail line itself. Because if they were to put in a commercial industrial building, I'm not sure how you would restrict that to other uses from being used for other purposes. So in this case, it would be unfair to the town's residents to not hold true to the zoning code here, and we ask that you deny this application. Thank you.
Well, I did submit a letter, but I forgot to make copies, and so a couple of the members of the board were reading it, and if that can go to the secretary, I'll send it electronically tomorrow if you like. But there is a copy that I submitted, and it does address the fact that there are two parcels, and either of those parcels could be used separately with a simple area variance for any of the allowed purposes in the zone. Would not require a use variance, and some of them might be non-complying previously existing uses.
No, that's the letter you received.
Gentlemen, would you like comments from the applicant?
Sure, go ahead. That's fine, yes, do that first.
Last month, I submitted a substantial amount of documentation which supported the criteria for the application and supported the criteria for the variance itself. I've also submitted railroad law number 8 and number 17, which indicated that New York State Railroad law supersedes town law. Mr. Futterfass said that he came up with railroad law number 9, which says that you would be required to get a certificate of necessity from the Commissioner of the Public Service Commission. And when we adjourned and tabled last month, the planning board was going to consult with the town attorney as to the interpretation of that law. Has there been an interpretation?
Yeah.
And that interpretation is?
She was going to read it. You got it.
Okay.
Are you done?
No.
Oh.
He wants to interpret why we read it, because that's going to drive.
My interpretation of that railroad law number 9 is it specifically identifies railroad roads and routes. It has nothing to do, it does not address yards, structure, or facilities. If in fact the railroad is going to create a new railroad line, and there is the need for obtaining properties or condemnation or eminent domain, that's what that law applies to. That's my interpretation. Ann?
It says, per your request, I have reviewed the variance application submitted by Catskill Mountain Railroad. The
Yeah,
application.
one second. This is a response from the town's attorney, Larry Walensky, regarding this application.
The application seeks both use and area variances for 2 parcels located at Station Road, Phoenicia, New York. The parcels are designated at the town of Shandaken tax maps as section 1413, block 3, lot 52, section 14.3, block 3, lot 29. According to the application, tax parcel 1413-352 is zoned Hamlet Residential, and tax parcel 1413-329 is zoned R3 Residential 3 acre. The applicant's proposed use of these parcels is rail equipment storage and rail equipment maintenance. Neither zoning district permits these uses, hence the application for a use variance. The applicant made a supplementary submission in support of its application dated March 11, 2016. That submission purports to provide justification for the grant of the requested use variance and further maintains that the proposed use is exempt from local zoning and land use regulation pursuant to the provisions of the New York State Railroad Law. We have reviewed both the exemption and use variance materials and offer the following for your consideration. Number 1 is exemption. In its March 11th, 2016 submission, the applicant asserts that a variance is unnecessary because the New York State Railroad Law and especially sections 8 and 17 of that law exempts the applicant from local land use regulation. We disagree. In order for a proposed use to be exempted, the railroad law would have to preempt the area of local land use regulation such that those regulations could not be applied to the proposed railroad use. To find preemption, the statute would have to expressly state that local land use laws are not applicable, or there must be some showing that it is the clear legislative intent of the statute that local land use laws are to be exempted. Nothing we have found in the Railroad Corporation's law, including the sections referred to by the applicant, supports and preemption. The sections cited by the applicant confer powers upon the railroad to acquire and use property to further the purpose of the railroad. However, nothing in these sections allow those powers to be exercised in an unregulated manner and in the absence of local police power regulation. Notably, the applicant's own long-term business plan states the railroad follows all local zoning laws and works with local planning agencies. The statement includes that the applicant has no expectation of being exempted from local land use regulation. 2, use variance. Entitlement to a use variance requires the applicant to